Well, gentlemen, we are back again with part two of Family Hour.
Okay.
As a brief explanation as to what had transpired, we were attempting to be able to work Leah and Rich as additions into this program, and when to do that, we need to use the more elaborate switch, which is a professional level switch for audio and video, and it has been problematic. We have not yet had a example where it has worked as we would have hoped, which is why we have gone back to the blogger's favorite. Almost all people who do this use this little red box. It's called a Forthright, and it's a little Forthright Scarlet, and it's pretty foolproof. It just does the job, and but it doesn't give you a lot of control. It just does the job, and we're back on it now. We have been on it for really everything that we have done up to this point, but we are trying to up our game, if you will, so that we can have even more camera angles and we can do more things. Like I could put a book down here on the desk where we're talking from and show that to you, or we could play multiple videos embed them into this program and talk to them as you would do a real studio production. Now, most of those things are done as a production and then edited and brought live, where we are all live streamed. So there are always challenges as you go forward, but that was the issue. It appears that the more elaborate switch that we have has technical issues within it. It's not a matter of just getting it all logged in, because it worked beautifully to begin, and we think it's overheating. So we think it has a short of some sort. But we have 4 or 5 other options that I do have. When Yahowah said, I want you to do this, and it became, of course, I realized I had no experience whatsoever. So I watched a whole bunch of programs on what kind of equipment to get and bought redundant of everything. So, we have like 8 cameras and 12 microphones and 50 different lights. But I also bought 6 or 7 different switches, and plus the audio gear, 4 of those, which are this Forthright Scarlet. So I have 4 of those, and then I have like 7 other more sophisticated switches, and so we're going to try some of those too to see if they do the job. Because when you're in this and God says, I want you to go, and this is what I want you to do, you don't say, well, let me try one thing, and then I live on an island, 2 months later I can get something else. No, it's like cables.
We don't have too much.
I bought 10 of 40 different cable types. It's just, you can't be in a position where you need it and don't have it. Mm-hmm. Not when there are souls at stake and it's God that's asking you to do it. So we have invested heavily in having the things that we need, and now we have a very astute man that is running it. But I don't care how astute you are. If there's a manufacturer glitch, damn those Chinese. Trump was right, but we're just not tariffing them enough. No, I'm just kidding.
That would really help.
Yeah, but all of this stuff is made in China, and some of it just doesn't perform as well as others. Anyway, where we were is we were talking about Malachi, and I hope that the audio quality now is back to our normal level.
Good here.
Okay, good. So we were talking about the fact that Malachi was the last of the prophets, and he conveyed Yahweh's message in 447 BCE. It's interesting that he talked about this very moment that we're living in now, and from that point in 447 BCE until Yahowah said, I want you to do this, young man. And we had our little discussion, and I pretended like I was negotiating with him. That was kind of a joke. He already had the answer to each of the 3 questions that I asked sitting there in my pocket. So obviously he knew it.
I wouldn't play cards with him either.
Yeah, I'm never going to play cards. You don't ever want to play cards with Yahowah. And as I said earlier today, when it was obvious to me that Yahweh, and reading Numbers 11, that Yahweh had decided that this is how he was going to intervene to resolve his people's problem through this Bashar 3,400 years ago. So I said, you really got to get up very early in the morning if you're going to beat Yahweh to the punch.
But he invented morning.
But he invented morning. So, yeah.
Good luck.
And he got a 15 billion year head start. So it's so now we get back to the my original premise. Since he's God, it's just easier to agree with him than it is. God says, this is what I want you to do next. You say, yes, yes, sir. That's what we're going to do next. It seems to work out pretty well. So there, since between 447 BCE and Towrah in 2001, according to Yahweh, there has been no one through whom he could speak, because no one was willing to listen to him. And therefore, there could have been no witness to admonish or assist Yisrael and Yehudim in their return, their shub to Yahweh, so he could shub return to them, until Yahweh said, okay, it's you. I want you to do this. Now, we've had this talk too. Had God said, oh, by the way, let me get your notepad out. I'm going to tell you everything we're going to do together and what's on your plate, including you're going to be bludgeoned to death as a sacrifice on Towrah, but don't let that bother you. It's only your body, and that's not of any great value going forward anyway. So don't let that bother you. You're going to write 35 books based on your translations. It's going to take you about 100,000 hours, but no big deal on any of that. And then when you really get comfortable and you love writing and you're having really a lot of fun doing it, I'm going to take you away from that.
Snatch it away from you.
Yeah, and you're going to become a vlogger and talk directly to my people. And by the way, they're going to hate you. So don't let that bother you. They hate me too. So you'll be in good company.
Good company, yeah.
I want you to talk to them, but they're not going to listen to you. They didn't listen to me either. So but better they annoy you than they annoy me, because if they keep on annoying me, I'm going to destroy the planet. So I'm going to have you be annoyed rather than me be annoyed, because you're not really powerful enough to blow up the planet. So
I like y'all. I really like y'all.
This is his plan, and you say, you really want to go with that plan? Yep, that's the plan he's going with. So here we are with the Yahowah blog, and here's the cast of characters that Yahweh sent my way to do this. Well,
okay, we're going to up our game now.
Now there may be some real intelligence to all this. Okay, so Yahweh is like the smartest guy in the universe, right?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So Yahweh is the smartest guy in the universe. He actually created the human brain and the ears and the eyes and all that sort of thing. So he should know how to communicate effectively to us humans. And yet when God tried to communicate to Yisrael, they told him to shut up and go away.
Unbelievable.
And then they just got so annoying, God said, I'm out of here. I'm not going to deal with these people anymore. And so what he had was sheer brilliance, and they didn't like it very much. And so now he picked a goy. I'm going the opposite end. I'm going from sheer brilliance to this.
To the other side of the world.
Yeah, to the other side of the world. So that's God's solution. Is you didn't like me when I was really smart and spoke directly to you. So now take a load of this. This is
Plan B for Bashar, huh?
Yeah, this is Plan B for Bashar. This is what we're going to go with now. And we've been doing it now for 24 years. And after 24 years of listening to Yahweh and writing these books based upon what he had to say and sharing it with you, then Yahweh said, go and buy all this equipment and look the camera in the lens and speak to my people. And that is what we're doing. So in all of that time, with very few exceptions, Jews, God's people, have been erel. They've been unresponsive. They are uncircumcised of ear, to quote Yahweh. They're very, very good at talking. but they're very bad at listening. Do you remember when Yahowah introduced himself to Moshe?
Yes.
That whole burning bush thing, which turned out to be a burning crag.
Rock.
Right.
Yeah, which is because that actually turned out to be prophetic. It was a burning crag, not a burning bush. So he made a crag light up and be illuminating. So that was a teaser for the miracle that he's going to accomplish through this crag. Anyway, and Moshe says, "Now, no can do because I don't speak very well." Remember that?
Yes.
And he says, "You go find somebody else. I don't want to do this job." And what did Yahowah provide that said, all right, after he told him, listen, didn't I make the ear? Didn't I make the tongue? Didn't I make your mouth? Don't you think I'm capable of operating your mouth and communicating effectively? Last time I checked, I designed all these things. And Moshe wasn't easily convinced, but he had a history with these people. He knew that this was an impossible job. So he said he had history with them. And my history with Jews was actually very favorable. I've been a businessman, and every time I did business with Jews, it was wonderful. I shake their hand, you cut a deal, and they honored the deal. They were bright, fun, honorable, inventive people. So my experience was just the opposite of Moshe's. Moshe tried to help them, and they turned on him. So maybe that was a trick too, is that I'm going to find somebody that really likes my people. see how that works.
That's funny.
It really is funny. It does have a sense of humor. So what did he propose for Moshe? A blabbermouth. He said, "There's your brother
Aaron
coming
talks
around
a
the
lot.
corner." Yeah, he talks a lot. I'm try a blabbermouth and see how that worked for you. So God's always got an answer. You're just not going to outsmart him. Sometimes he likes to toy with us. So Moshe got a blabbermouth, and what happened with the blabbermouth? I mean, he just did everything wrong.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the reason why. You know what Aaron means? The alternative.
Lousy alternative.
Yeah, he was a lousy. I mean, Aaron was a horrible human being. He just a complete mess. And so it was back to Moshe. And God says, I've got a sense of humor in all this. So here we are in the Yahowah blog, and I wasn't smart enough, evidently, to say I don't speak very well. I didn't use that as an excuse. I told you that when Yahowah said, I want you to do this, and we went through that whole pretense that I said, okay, can I negotiate? And he said, oh, absolutely, sure. What do you want, kid?
Yeah, give it a shot, pal.
Give it a shot. So, I gave him 3 things that I wanted, and he said, okay,
sure.
Nope, fine with all that. Could you reach into your pocket, please, and read the answer? That, by the way, I wrote 3,000 years ago. Okay.
There it was.
And there it was. So here we are. I like this job, and I like the challenge of Jews. One of the things that I learned early on, and I've been in 175 countries, so I've seen a lot of people around the world. There is one thing that one group of people that I like more than Jews, and that's Israelis. And there's actually a difference between most Israelis and Jews. Israelis are tough. They have a little bit of a rascal to them. They don't back down. They're bright. They're industrious. Every encounter I've ever had with an Israeli has been spectacular. Now, I don't get along with the rabbis, although I did for a while. Now I'm their worst nightmare. And I have a problem with anybody who is a Marxist, socialist, progressive, because that is the politics of make-believe. And I don't like where it's gone, which is to serve as the pimps for Muslims. But the normal Israelite are my favorite people in the world. I love them. I've always loved them. I've always respected them. I always felt comfortable with them. I've always felt that I was a fairly strong-willed, aggressive, tough, straight shooter. And so my perceptions of how I've dealt all of my life, I see in Israelites. And so Israelis are my favorite, and I think that's part of God's deal here, is that he got really annoyed by them, and he says, so I'm going to pick a goy that really loves them, because so long as he can love them for the 32 years that we're going to work together, that'll be enough, and we'll get this done. All the while, I'm disgusted at the religious, so I have no problem in continuing to demean them. And one of the things that God set as a standard, and I like the fact that God sets a fairly low bar for what we're trying to achieve here. So when somebody sets a low expectation, you have a tendency to do well. One of the things I learned when I took my companies public is you under promise and over deliver. That is the key to success running a public company: under promise and over deliver. So you're looking at a fellow like Elia. He didn't write anything. So if you're a writer and you love to write, well, you've got a leg up. That's a really good start. Elia was a student of religion and politics. He knew the religion of Baal and Asherah as better than anybody of his day. And so I now had an example that I could follow, and no one has ever been more effective at disproving religion, particularly the two most popular, Christianity and Islam, and then also Judaism, than I have been. So I had a bar set, and I'll stack up my analysis disproving Christianity and Judaism and Islam against not only anybody alive today, anybody throughout history. There's nobody that's been able to do as much. And you find then that since that Yahweh likes Elia, he took him and he's going to deliver him back for exactly this position, that if you're anti-religious and you mock politics and you're sarcastic as all get out, if you can use sarcasm and have a mocking tone, then you're going to please God. So it's kind of like having a cheat sheet. Okay, what does God like? Well, he really liked this guy. And what is it that made this guy unique? He was anti-religious, he was anti-political, and he was really funny. So, that's the standard. And then you look at the guy that you would think would be the ultimate standard, and that's Moshe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Moshe crashed and burned. I mean, Moshe.
Yeah.
I mean, a complete fold. Moshe in Numbers 11, Bamidbar 11. I mean, it's just, I can't stand these people. I can't deal with these people. You've been grossly unfair to me to ask me to try to lead them. No one can lead them. And because no one can lead them and you've given me an impossible job, I just assume you kill me and try to continue this way. That's
heavy stuff.
And so you're knowing that Yahweh said he is the greatest of the prophets, and Yahweh communicated the Torah through him and led the people to the promised land with him. And so Yahweh has a very high regard for Moshe.
Yeah.
And that's a bar that I can step over. That, we're playing limbo, and you get to step over the bar, and this one's about ankle high. That one, we can all exceed that level. So, and then you look at Dode. God, I chose him. I love him. I anointed him. I empowered him to be king. He is my son. I'm his father. You can't be in a better position with God than Dode. He even says he's coming back as brilliant as the sun. He's going to be Elia, God in my presence. And oh my goodness, did he ever have his blunders?
More flaws than the hairs on his head. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like God has set a standard that we can't match. Meeting his expectations, I guess he says, I don't want to expect more than you're capable of delivering. We can deliver at that level. So here we are. The only question then becomes, do you have the stamina for 32 years of every waking hour of your life for 32 years? Do you have that much stamina? That's a lot to ask. And are you willing, no matter what people say or do, to stay the course? Always go to where my words lead. That's a reasonable ask. And then my people, even though you like them, they're not very likable. So are you going to put up with them to the point that you actually convince them to come back home to me? And I think that's the only unresolved question is, can we do this for the next 8 years? And keep the proper attitude and approach, the consistency, the dedication, the devotion, and not allow the recalcitrance, the sometimes really obnoxious rhetoric of Jews to dissuade us or to give up on because the means of conveyance is so difficult. And X is an anti-Semitic cesspool. It is so rigged against the truth and against God and against his message that there are lots of times where you just want to give up, and you said, no, I can't do that. We're going to stick it through. Facebook, fortunately, has been much better. You don't get quite as much interaction, but in terms of developing an audience and creating a forum where we can exchange important information, Facebook has been quite good. YouTube, it's very difficult to get traction. Unless you're trying to influence people over really horrible things, it's tough to get traction in that environment. So anyway, we're devoted to it. We're going to stay the course, but you got to recognize Yahweh has a sense of humor, and this is easily the greatest miracle that he's ever pulled off. I think it's why he afforded 7 spirits to the Choter. This is God's greatest miracle, is to make us as a covenant family effective and doing what he failed to do and Moshe failed to do and Dode failed to do. Yashiyah failed. Hosea failed. By his own admission, Shamuel failed. Solomon obviously failed. They all failed.
Well, the more I read, the more I see that so much of what they were talking about and written wasn't written for their audience. It was written for today. I mean, you say this is all in that. Yeah. What we're seeing in the Torah is, and even going back through Numbers 11 and 12 and 9, so much is written about this time and what's happening now, and a Choter and an Akar and a Nesh Banner and a Bashar, that those folks, I don't know that they had a chance to get it because it was written for us here and now, Yeah,
I would go as far to say as the explanation of the nature of the covenant. There is no one until I engaged with Yahweh that understood that it had 5 conditions and 5 benefits and how one engages in the covenant. So that narrative was written for us now because it didn't do anybody any good up till now. Mm-hmm. The introduction of Yahweh's name and the proper pronunciation of Yahweh's name and why it was introduced that way has never been understood until now. So I think that narrative was written for now. The explanation of going back in time to the flood associated with Noah. No one had ever explained it scientifically and explained it in terms of why Yahweh did what he did in that place at that time and who was he dealing with. No one had ever explained it prior to our collaboration. So was it also for our time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look at the creation account. It has been bungled in every which way. I'm the first person to actually understand the creation account over 624 hours and what each day represented in that process. And the most important thing is to appreciate what the fourth day of creation represents, with the greater and the lesser lights serving as the fulfillment of the moed, of the restoring witnesses to that testimony. And so that creation account was shared 3,400 years ago, never resonated with people until now. And then you turn to the presentation of the Moed Mikre. And again, it's been available for 3,450 years, and not a single rabbi understands it. They celebrate Passover as a 7-day feast without any mention of matzah, which is the central day. It's actually a 7-day celebration of matzah, with Passover being the first day of it. And they have no clue as to what Bakurim means, or what happened on matzah, or what happened on Pesach. They even screw it up by saying that Pesach is the celebration of their freedom. No, they didn't go anywhere. They had a nice meal that night. It's about life. You weren't free until matzah, because matzah is when you're freed of religious and political guilt, when they left the religious and political corruption of Mitzrayim. And they had no idea that anything that Dode wrote on all of his Mizmor, no one had ever understood that the Mizmor were talking about Dode's fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim in year 4000 33 CE. Or you look at Daniel. No one realized that Gabriel is Dode.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And he's explaining what he's going to do and what this means. And then actually to do the math that takes you to the proper time. And then once you know that that date is Chag Matzah in 33 CE, you now know that 33 CE is year 4000 Yah, and that 1968 BCE is year 2000 Yah, that Abraham and Yishak performed the dress rehearsal for that event in 33 CE, and then you can go 40 Yobel forward to 2033, and now you know the timeline of when God's going to return. No one had ever done that before.
No.
So was that information provided for us? Of course, because no one else had ever understood it previously. You look at Numbers 5, Numbers 19 with the adulterous woman and the red heifer, and then Numbers 11 and Numbers 12 in terms of the message they convey. Heretofore, not a soul on the planet ever understood any one of those 4 chapters. So were they written for people not to understand them, or were they written so that we could not only comprehend them, but explain their meaning to God's people at this time?
I believe the latter, yeah.
So what we're finding is that everything was written for this time, because this is the most important time. You're either now going to be part of going forward with Yahowah or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that is part of it. But imagine God saying, my people won't listen to me, so I'm going to find a goy who has no training in any of this, and he's going to learn to translate Paleo-Hebrew. He's going to do so from the oldest extant sources of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which, by the way, I'm going to publish the year that he starts. I'm going to make those scrolls available the year that he begins. Just by chance, of course.
Right.
And I'm going to pick a guy whose one skill that he would say that makes him unique is the ability to make connections between things, so that once you build a base of knowledge, I'm able to extrapolate meaning from it so that I understand. And that's the guy that he picked.
Yeah.
So I do think you're right that a huge percentage of this was presented to be understood now, but you still got to invest the time to build the base of knowledge so that you can interpret it correctly and present the entire portrait, which, by the way, was put together by us for the first time ever, and present it then to God's people. So you have a lot to offer. It's almost like there's so much to offer, you almost don't know where to stop and start, but you know that if you continue to convey all of this, parts of it are going to resonate with God's people. You take Yeshayah 17 and 18. No one prior to my translations of it understood a part of it, and yet it tells us exactly when the Shabuah harvest is going to happen, when the Towrah harvest is going to happen, what's going to be manifest on those two events, and how a chain of events is going to lead to a Fakistanian state being carved out of Israel, by the United States being the one who betrays Israel in this process. And we've been able to explain that now over the course of 10 years, and now we're watching it literally manifest before our very eyes.
Yeah.
So God's giving us every tool that could possibly be used to garner his people's attention, so that this message resonates with them. So it is the ultimate miracle. It's miraculously explaining, revealing a first time ever knowledge of these things, so that this otherwise unqualified individual would have 10,000 or more profound insights that no one had ever perceived previously. And they'd all be right. That he'd be the first not only to reintroduce Yahweh's name and prove the pronunciation of it, but the greatest discovery we've made by far, overwhelmingly, took us 22 years to make. Because you can't just make this discovery, you have to prove it.
Yeah.
You have to explain it. You have to be able to explain how Dode came to the understanding that he should do this. And that's not easy until you understand what happened in 1968 BCE with Abraham and Yishak on Moriah as a dress rehearsal for Passover. And Yahweh says, I'm going to provide the lamb. And they're having a discussion about fathers and sons. You're not in a position to understand how Dode came to the conclusion, wait a minute, God's calling me his son. This is what I need to do to earn my people's respect. And so you've got to say, how did he figure it out? And then why did he decide to do it? What was his motivation for accepting the idea of being bludgeoned by Rome? He actually wrote about his own crucifixion, so he knew how his body was going to succumb. And then he knew that he was going to carry our guilt into Sheol and to be separated in Sheol during Matzah to celebrate Bikurim. And he had heard Yahweh called him his Bakor, firstborn. So he figured it out. But then it's one thing to figure it out, and another thing to have the courage to say, I'll do it.
Right.
Yes.
And then you got to figure out that Dode said, I figured it out and that I want to do this. And he convinced Yahweh that it was the right call. Of course, it's like me negotiating with Yahweh. I said, I think I want these things. And he says, okay, young man, reach into your pocket. I wrote this 3,000 years knowing that you would say exactly these things. So Dode's saying, I figured it out. I need to fulfill Pesach Matzah Bikurim. I'm going to actually speak in 300 years through Daniel to say the time I'm going to arrive. I'm going to write a psalm that explains how I'm going to suffer through crucifixion 700 years before crucifixion even existed. But we're going to do this together. Mm-hmm. And we understand why, which is that he read Numbers 11 too.
Yeah.
He knew that Moshe couldn't do it. He knew in his own situation, he had his own son lead a rebellion against him. He couldn't do it. No one can lead God's people. Yeah. God himself can't lead his people. So he says, perfect answer. What if the only people that are there to lead are the ones that I saved? Mm-hmm. then I don't have to worry about leading them. I don't have to worry about their loyalty. I don't have to worry about their devotion. I don't have to worry about them conniving behind my back, because every single one of them will be there because of what I have done for them.
Thrilled to be so.
Yeah.
Yes. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Suffered 2 days for an eternity of respect. It was, absolutely, totally, and completely brilliant. And so to figure that out, and then to announce that Dowd is the Messiah, he is the Son of God, he is the one who arrived in 33 CE to be crucified, fulfilling Passover, as the Messiah, as the Son of God, and as the returning King, well, then that takes you to the next step. That means that Jesus never existed. That means the entire Christian New Testament is absolute trash. That all Paul did is recognize that the Son of God and Messiah had been here, and he had been crucified, and he was crucified on Passover. And Paul went from there with his demon possession to provide a substitute, through identity theft, a crude counterfeit of him. And the rabbis were so self-absorbed in their religion, they missed the whole thing, which is why God's so pissed off at them.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And they still don't get it. So this is what God set us up with. It's the most profound platter of insights and understanding that's ever been offered in all of human history. And God says, if I can collaborate with this guy and his friends up here to figure all this out and communicate it with you boldly, bluntly, powerfully, that's a miracle. Pay attention. There's no other explanation for that than it is the ultimate miracle. The Bashar, the Choter, the Nakri, Yada, is a miracle from God.
Yes.
And there is every reason to acknowledge that this miracle from God did not begin 24 years ago in the wake of 9/11 in 2001, when God reached out to me on Towrah in 2001 and asked me to do this. Because he's written about what we were going to do together for 3,400 years. So we go back a long time. I'm not liberated to know all of it, other than I have witnessed myself in the story much earlier. We were talking before this program began, and I was having a lovely conversation earlier today with my beloved friend Jeff, and he is now enjoying a budding relationship with another covenant member. Two covenant members that found each other, and it's a wonderful thing to experience for them. And she asked me, so you're going to talk about Numbers 11 and what you found? I said, well, Numbers 11 is part of Coming Home 4. I wrote Coming Home 4. This program we're delivering right now is derived from Coming Home 4, which is the last book that I'm writing, and we're going to get there. It might be now 75 pages ahead of where we are right now, but there's a place in it, in Numbers 11, where after God gives up on Israel and Moshe gives up on Israel, that God presents the answer. Mm-hmm. And he says, the two people that are inspired by the Spirit, that just are speaking for me and are living in my home, are Eldod, God's Dowd, Eldod, and Medod, Dowd's supporter and friend. Right. Those are the two guys. Right. And you go, holy mackerel! You're telling the world how you're going to resolve this problem. Dowd's going to serve as the Passover lamb and fulfill matzah and Bakurim, and then you're going to have his helper Medod fulfill Shabbat, Towrah, and serve God's people up as the other sacrificial, the red heifer, for God for their return on Shabbat, and now the greater luminary has a lesser luminary. The sun has a moon to reflect his light. That's how I'm going to do it. And he's talking about it 3,400 years ago.
Oh, all three Zeroah in the tent when Moshe has his meltdown at the same time.
Isn't that something?
All right.
All three.
Does anybody know who the three Zeroah are?
Gosh. They were all there in the tent at the same time. And you know what's also interesting? At that moment, Moshe had 1/70th of a Ruach of Yahowah. 1/70th.
Mm-hmm.
Dode was given the Ruach of Yahowah. It doesn't even say the Ruach of Yahowah, but the Ruach.
Right.
That stays with him for his entire life, which means the Ruach was actually there with him in Sheol, protecting his soul in Sheol. And then that last guy, that Zeroah, he must have been a really needy fellow because he had
a lot to do.
Seven Ruach. And one of those Ruach,
and Leah.
One it's really nice. It's intelligence, and the next one is understanding, is one that's knowledge, and one that is comprehension in terms of understanding the whole picture from beginning to end, and this ability to communicate it intelligently, and then respect for Yahweh's name, and then boldness, Gabor. He's going to be a bull. Nothing is going to deter him. He's Gabor. But one of the spirits is literally the spirit of Yahowah. So if the spirit of Yahowah is inside of this one that is serving the king, and he's introduced throughout the entire story of Numbers 11, he is the herald. And that is the story of Numbers 11 is the herald, the Bashar, is going to solve this problem. He's going to nurture these wayward children.
Yeah.
And so here you're reading a story that you're in, and the story was written 3,400 years ago. And, God's got a different way of managing time than we do, but still, it's a little mind-bending, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So this is why we're sharing this message. It's why we're undeterred when fancy switches don't perform as they're supposed to, and we come right back. There is nothing that is, in fact, when Yahowah, who wrote the textbook on proper chotering, and the Choter was first introduced by Dode, which means that Dode read about himself, God's Dode, in Numbers 11, and he read that he was going to have a May-Dode, which is the one supporting him as Dode, and both filled with the Spirit, both coming out of the home of God, both as restoring witnesses. He read about this 3,000 years ago. He knew what we were going to do. So when Dode wrote the 14th Mashal about the Choter, he already knew him.
Yeah.
So it's
they were
to be known by Dode 3,400 years ago. Well, actually known by Dode 3,000 years ago, written 3,400 years ago, and I'm not quite that old. Yeah, I'm not quite that old. So it's really it's just fascinating how prophecy works and how God can present these personalities way back in time and explain how he's going to resolve these issues. So he's got it all worked out. He says, okay, you didn't like me when I talked to you, and you didn't like it when a Lowy talked to you, and you didn't like it when a Yehud talked to you. You didn't like it when he was a prophet. You didn't like it when he was a Messiah and king. So I'm going to have none of that. The next guy that's going to talk to you is going to be none of those things.
Bat and cleanup.
Yeah, bat and cleanup. Yep. So here we are. Jews, you may love being religious, but I love Yahweh, and I love Yehudim and Israelites more than you love your Talmud. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to prevail. You know, today I saw a number of videos. I've seen this guy before, but it's a guy claiming that he is the Mahdi.
Mm-hmm.
And he claims that he is Jesus and Muhammad for our generation. And he presents himself as an Ezekiel type in front of a new temple. He presents himself in front of the Kaaba. You know, he is the I am all religion for all people sort of a guy. And it's the Mahdi has arrived is his handle. And he's, you know, got his religious garb on, and he's kind of all sinister, but yet soft-spoken. He does really a glitzy job of his videos. They're all glitzy. The religious is going to eat him up. And you realize this is as close to what we have seen as a corporeal manifestation of Hasatan, the man who will approach all religions as the embodiment of all religions. And you say, okay, well, that's, you know, this could be the guy that I'll get to spar against, and that Elia and I will get to spar against. And you know, we're moving up on that time when he will be disclosed. Now,
all real.
Yeah. So fortunately, where there are instructions to be grasped, and we've had plenty, and people to teach, and obstacles to be swept away. You know, this is one of the things that that I was reminded of when our technology didn't work, and we had another glitch earlier this week where we lost the audio stream. That was not a technical glitch. That was Asher's tail for the audio stream failing. Our dogs.
There you go, Adrian.
Yeah, where our problem there is our dogs were too happy with us. So, you know, if you create a happy environment for your dog, something's going to happen with their tail sooner or later. Obstacles. Do you know that in Yashayahu, when he's writing the textbook on how to be a Choter, he says that one of the Choter's primary tasks as the voice of God for our time is to clear away all the obstacles and have a raised highway from man's world to God. So we are in the business of clearing away obstacles. Now, to be in the business of clearing away obstacles, what does there have to be?
Well, there has to be obstacles.
There you go. So, should we be expecting that everything goes perfect all the time, or should we be expecting
Never has.
things are going to go wrong and people are going to get to see how we deal with those obstacles and overcome them?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So when Yahweh chose somebody to represent him, is this person going to have a perfect life where everything went just fine, or was this person have to overcome some challenges in their life?
Hey, you got to get some experience.
Yeah. Yep. So it is interesting to see that almost every member of the covenant family that shared their testimony has overcome obstacles. Because that's how you develop character. That's how you develop grit. That's how you show that you can be trusted. Next time an obstacle's there, you'll know how to handle it. But it is obstacles that we must overcome, and how we deal with them should communicate loudly, boldly to God's people. And if there are no obstacles, if everybody just, everybody rolls over in Israel and says, oh yeah, that's obviously true. It's Yahweh's name. We've got no argument with that. And yeah, Dode was the Messiah. Clear. God said he was the Son of God. With you on that. Obviously that means that the New Testament is rubbish and there was no Jesus. And yep, we agree that Rabbi Akiba, the father of Judaism, was a real scoundrel. He tried to fool us with a false Messiah. He caused the diaspora, led to the Holocaust. That is a really terrible guy to base your religion on. We're good with you on that. And obviously Maimonides didn't know what he was talking about. There's no correlation in 613 mitzvah. There's not even 613 of them. That's not the number of seeds on a pomegranate or bones in the body. And his dating scheme was based upon the sanctification of the moon and the number 19, and has nothing to do with the Torah. And he's off by 250 years. We recognize all that. We agree with it. We understand that when God says, I want you to leave Babel, he's talking about the Babylonian Talmud, and that we need to go Judaism and be Jews, not trapped into Judaism. no problem with all that. We're good with you on all of that. We're going to celebrate the Moed Mikre as they were intended. We were going to accept the terms and conditions of the covenant just as God wrote them. We're with you all the way. Is that what we should expect?
And then this weekend, we just all go home together.
Right.
Yeah. Love for that to happen, but that's exactly the opposite of what God says.
Not one in a million in that, is it?
Yes. Yes. It's exactly the opposite of what God says. It is by overcoming obstacles, that's being steadfast. It is by us following God's example, seeing it through. And look at even Moshe. He fell flat on his face, but he still saw the job through, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he did.
He got
He
back
got him
up
to the door. Yeah.
and he got him to the door. And so that's what God's looking for. And, when he chose us, he knew we would stay the course.
Mm-hmm.
And that the obstacles for us were challenges to be resolved. And so there are obstacles to be swept aside. There are challenges to overcome. There's an opportunity at every new day. And even if others don't see it, we do. And we see it, we appreciate it, we love it. And we also know that in this mission of awakening God's people, we aren't tasked here to save 8 billion people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When God wrote in the second statement on the first tablet, and he says, "Don't you dare be religious. I hate religion. Don't be in a religious setting. Don't act upon religious gods. Don't speak for them. Don't sit in their presence. Don't be associated with them. Just do not be religious, period." That's what the second statement says. It ends by saying that fathers corrupt their sons politically and religiously to the third and fourth generation. But then it says that the numbers who are going to receive his favoritism and his mercy will be thousands, and they will do so by closely examining and carefully considering the terms and conditions of the covenant. And I've said this before, thousands amongst billions is what?
1 in a million.
Right. So if 1 in a million people on the planet, and more favorable than that amongst the Jews, accepts what we are saying on behalf of God, we've met the criterion, haven't we?
Yeah.
So anything beyond that is exceeding expectations. So maybe this is God saying, "I know how this works too. I'm going to underpromise and overdeliver."
The original underpromise, overdeliver, huh?
Yeah, it's the whole strategy right there. It's going to be thousands. Well, thousands is amongst billions is 1 in a million. So that means that we can relax and enjoy the process. We're not going to stress about how somebody responds. I'm constantly telling the most popular people that support Israel that you need to really clean up your act. Your language you're using is not right. The terms that you're using are not right. You're not speaking for Yahowah. You don't excoriate the religion that is killing you. You need to up your game, and you're just not doing it. And I'm constantly pounding away at them, saying you need to up your game. This is not good enough. And once in a while I'll get an acknowledgement from them, but for the most part, nah, they're too full of themselves
Mm-hmm.
to listen. But I've got their number. I'm not backing away. And we know that ultimately there's a meaningful number of very interesting people. And when you look at the people so far who have written their testimony on the site, we have interesting people.
Yes, we do.
People whose lives were a mess that have come to know the truth, and they are living vibrant lives that matter and are exceedingly articulate at this point about God. So as we've said many times, the purpose of the Torah is to perfect the imperfect. That's why there's two conjugations in Hebrew, the perfect and the imperfect. And so the whole purpose of the Torah and of the Moed Mikre and of the covenant is to perfect the imperfect. That is what Dowd did when he carried our guilt into Sheol, and we are the beneficiaries of it, but we are not selfish. We know it. We gain everything by it. We're inheriting the universe. We are sons and daughters of the living God. And yet our motivation isn't to say, well, better that, there's a handful of us and then we get all of God's attention and more of the universe. Exactly the opposite approach. God wants a family. He wants everyone who is willing to make a contribution and listen and learn to be part of his family. And we're here to give it away to as many as are receptive. And the benefits are you become immortal. Your soul exists forever. You're not dealing with 70 years or 700 years or 7,000 years or 7 million years or 7 billion years. You're dealing with forever. And right now we have imperfections. I don't know about you guys, but you're losing a few of your hairs there, a little gray in the beard, and so my eyesight. You guys both have glasses on, so the eyesight fails.
That's just the start of my list.
Yeah, so we're not quite as what we once were. We're in decaying bodies, and God says, between your body, which I'm going to replace with energy, infinitely more powerful and capable, but I'm also going to take everything you've ever done wrong in your life. I'm going to carry it off into Sheol through Dowd. We're going to deposit there, never to be seen again, which means we're in the perfect of all places. Rather than being forgiven for things that we have done, there's nothing that we have done that is inappropriate that God even is recognized. So all he sees is the good in us. That's why he saw the failure in Abraham is so wonderful. It's why he saw the failure in his beloved son, Dowd, as being so wonderful, is because he took all of the things that were less than perfect and got rid of them. So all he sees is the good in us. That's why he's so pleased with us. And God's offering that to you. So you're perfect. And then he says, I'm going to make you my sons and daughters. You're the heirs of the universe. Your dad is God. And then I'm going to enrich you. I'm going to empower you. I'm going to enlighten you. I'm going to emancipate you. And I'm going to enable you so that you are essentially like me. That sounds like a really good deal to me.
Sign me up.
Sure.
And then you have your inheritance is all God has to give, which is not only this universe, but also Shamaim in the seventh dimension, which is infinitely bigger than the universe that is infinitely large.
Yeah.
That's
not
going
to get bored.
Yeah. So we're going to continue to share it. I think eternity is more interesting with more people, so long as they're of the same mind, the same attitude, have attributes that will make it interesting. God wants people who are steadfast, who are going to be consistent, who like to work, who enjoy the challenges, love to learn.
That's fun.
That's where we're going. That's what we have to offer, and people who are passionate about him, his son, and his people. I think that in our cases, I don't know all of your history, but I know in me, he picked a man that loved his people right from the beginning and still loves them. I admire them. I respect them. I love them. And I am now more Yehud and more Yisraelite than most any Yehud or Yisraelite who has ever lived.
Get that.
And so he picked somebody that got to choose to be part of his family.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Sure.
So, fellas, that's I think that's a wrap for our program. We did it in 2 segments. We had about a 15-minute timeout. We're still at 2 hours now with the 15-minute timeout. I'm actually kind of glad we had the intermission. We were able to show how we overcome challenges and really focus on what matters. And I think that this conversation, which has been about 99% extemporaneous this evening, is helpful because
Yes,
we've
sir.
had a very candid conversation about how God is choosing to work and to get his people's attention at this time. And quite frankly, I think it's the greatest miracle God's ever done. And we want you to capitalize. So thank you. Shabbat Shalom. It's way early in the morning before in Israel now, but there'll be lots of time to listen later. We want you. God wants you. Your King wants you to walk away from religion, to stop trusting and relying on your political leaders and even your IDF, and to trust and rely on him. Come back to him. Return to him for the first time in 3,400 years and experience the excitement, the enlightenment, the enrichment, the empowerment, the sheer joy of fun, of sharing your life with Yahweh, the creator of the universe, the author of life. Thank you for listening. Happy Shabbat to one and all. Good night.